Zach Bryan's Summertime Blues EP dropped, but beyond the music, this EP left me asking myself a lot of questions, mostly about release schedules and how often I think artists should be releasing music. Obviously, it's not my choice when artists drop, I don't have any right to tell an artist what they can and can't do, but as a fan, I think it's interesting seeing how an artist's timing can affect their brand as well as the music itself. So these are just my thoughts about the situation from my perspective as a fan, but I'd really be interested to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you feel completely opposite to me. It's just a discussion I've been burning to have, and it mostly boils down to which is better, quality or quantity, because they both have different pros and cons depending on how you look at it. Summertime Blues is the latest addition to the Zach Bryan discography, despite arriving less than 2 months after his blockbuster of an album, American Heartbreak. But I mean, he wasn't even done after this EP, because a week after Summertime Blues, he was already back again with Till Brooklyn. Releasing this much music has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks, and my use of much is a double entendre here, because not only do I mean how often Zach has been releasing, but from a quantitative standpoint, there is something to say about the sheer amount of music Zach has been releasing, because he didn't just release an album, an EP, and then a single. He dropped a 34-song album, which is like 3 albums worth of music in one. Then he dropped an EP the length of a standard album. Like, I seriously don't know anyone who's ever called 9 songs an EP. I mean, in comparison to American Heartbreak, it's a freaking single, but in normal people terms, this is not an EP. It's another album, which is partly why I really want to discuss it, because it feels much more significant than a standard EP. And then to top it all off, he hit us with another single the week after. And like I said, it got me thinking about how releasing at this kind of rate can affect the artist positively or negatively. So what are the pros and cons of releasing at this rate? Well, the obvious first benefit of putting out this much music is exposure and momentum. Especially in today's world where everyone has access to every song ever whenever they want, becoming relevant has become easier, but staying relevant is much harder. It's not like people are going to stores, spending $25 on a record, bringing it home, and then spinning it for months. No, they're gonna check out your album, maybe get all the way through it, pick out some songs they like, and then they're on to the next. And depending on how much they like your album compared to literally everything else in the entire world, that'll dictate how often they come back to it. It goes without saying, but the best way to drive up traffic on your profile is by releasing new music. People are going to come back and check it out. So by releasing new music, you're constantly bringing people back who will most likely be bringing new ears with them. It also increases your odds of landing a hit. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but like if you put out 50 songs, the likelihood of one of them landing is much higher than if you put out like 7. Not that Zach needs a hit. Something in the Orange has grown to be about as big as it gets for underground singles, but my point is more general, saying that the more music you release, the more likely it is one of them is going to land. And I think it's no coincidence albums in genres like rap have been getting noticeably longer since the arrival of platforms like TikTok. Similarly, if you have more music available, it's more likely a listener is going to find a song they like. I think the most obvious example of this right now would be Yeat, which I know is a really random example since I'm talking about Zach Bryan, but just give me a second. Yeat is someone who has now had some songs take off on TikTok. He's got a few hits under his belt, and I think his constant releases definitely help that. The dude has put out 7 albums in 3 years, and look at how the track lists have grown over time. His albums went from 7 songs to 29, and I don't think that's a coincidence at all. Every time he releases an album, it drives up traffic on his profile, people check out the new album, and he's banking on at least one moment of one of the songs going viral, bringing more attention to him, and then by the time all those new people find out who Yeat is, he's got another brand new spanking album for them to check out. Do I think someone like Yeat's albums are going to age well? No, none of his albums are going to go down as classics, because that's not what he's after. He's just doing his best to capitalize on this popularity high he's riding right now, and more power to him, because he's doing a pretty good job of it, even if I hate his music. Going back to Zach Bryan though, it is much harder to crank out music at Zach Bryan's rate when it's at Zach Bryan's level of quality. This whole EP was written and recorded after American Heartbreak, meaning in 6 weeks Zach was able to churn this whole thing out, which I think is remarkable since I think the EP is still pretty good, but the quantity is still kind of suffocating. And I know I'm not alone in that, because I've talked to several people who love Zach Bryan but admittedly need a break from new music. But what does Yeat have to do with Zach Bryan, and what are the drawbacks I was referring to earlier? Well, I don't think Zach is after the same kind of success as someone like Yeat. That sounds obvious, so I should clarify. I know the two are in completely different worlds musically. I'm just comparing them due to their similarly excessive output and how that strategy affects them differently. But back to what I was saying, I don't think Zach is after the same kind of success as Yeet. I think it's safe to say Zach doesn't write songs with the goal of them taking off on a platform as shallow as TikTok. I mean, just looking back on his career arc so far, from his explosion on social media, which led to Deanne, and then watching how he and his sound grew over time as he shot into superstardom, Zach's career up until this point has been nothing but historic. And I think what's cool is you can point to each release in his catalog and see how it played such an important role in his development as an artist. And especially when you're talking about American Heartbreak, that album brought with it a moment that was nothing short of iconic. Everything about that rollout and subsequent release felt monumental. So then to turn around hardly 2 months later and release another full but completely separate body of work is where I struggle, because it almost feels like a disservice to American Heartbreak. Because as I was saying, with streaming services, it's almost like kids with toys, where as soon as there's a new toy, they don't want the old one. And I'm not saying nobody cares about American Heartbreak anymore, because that would just be so far from true. What I am saying is releasing a new project, entering a new phase so soon after what was undeniably your biggest, most iconic stage, I just don't think it allows for American Heartbreak to settle in and age as well as it could have. With a record as massive both quantitatively and culturally, Zach easily could have sat on that album for several years, and it would have done nothing but age like fine wine and continued to stand as a pillar in his discography. I'm not saying I want to go 3 or 4 years without a new Zach Bryan album, but off of American Heartbreak, I could have. However, with that in mind, I would have liked it if, we could have held off maybe more than 2 months before moving on to the next chapter, and then maybe hold off more than a week before the next single after the album-length EP, a month and a half after the triple album-length album. I don't know, maybe I'm being picky, but I think it chips away at the significance of American Heartbreak. If you're constantly releasing music, naturally I think it makes the music less significant. If you have a 7-song album, each song will feel much more important, much more crucial to the body than what it would on a 30-song album. It's not a diss to the quality, it's just an observation of the weight the work carries. Tying this back to Yeet for a second to finish illustrating my point, if Yeet didn't release an album for 2 years, he would completely fall off the face of the earth. Why? Because his music isn't worthwhile, it's not built to last, it's built for a viral moment. But when you have something like American Heartbreak with the build-up, the anticipation, and then the music being as stellar as it was, that's the kind of album you could go on a Kendrick Lamar type hiatus from. I mean, even look at Frank Ocean. It's coming up on 6 years since his last album, Blonde, yet he still remains one of the more buzzy characters in music. If anything, he's only grown or at least maintained his popularity over the years, simply because the music speaks for itself. And I mean, think about it. Would Blonde have aged into such a generational classic if Frank dropped an album every year following Blonde? I don't know, I think part of the mystique and appeal of Blonde is seeing how it has remained relevant and applicable over the years. I should reiterate, I'm not saying Zach shouldn't release new music. I'm not saying he should have gone on a 6-year hiatus following American Heartbreak. All I'm saying is that I think it's important to give albums, especially of American Heartbreak's caliber, time to sink in. I think American Heartbreak deserved more time in Zach's spotlight. And so although I think rather highly of the musical content on Summertime Blues, I am left debating myself if I actually like the release at all from a logistical standpoint, because I know myself, I would have loved some more time to just sit on American Heartbreak. The only way to see the lasting impact of an album is with time, and I think if artists think they have something special, they should give it the time it deserves to grow into what they think it can be. Maybe Zach just doesn't hold American Heartbreak as highly as I do, maybe he just doesn't care, both of which are totally valid, but I'm just on here venting about how I feel. As I said in the intro, do let me know what you think of my side in the comments below. Maybe I brought some interesting talking points, maybe I'm putting too much thought into it and I just need to go outside more, who knows. Let me know if you guys want an actual review of the EP. Originally I sat down to do that, but then figured, you know what, why not just share some other thoughts about the release itself? But yeah, let me know if you still want a review. I can definitely do that. Anyways, that's all I've got for you guys today. Links to my Instagram, Discord, podcast are all down below in the description. Be sure to like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and yeah, until next time, I hope y'all have a great day.